What's going on, creators? Yeah, I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I got some things wrote down. Hopefully, add something positive to your mental diet for today. It kind of sound like a broken record if you watch these over and over again. Where it's like the importance of your mental diet. I feel like is very almost more important than your physical diet for your overall well-being. Especially if you're stuck in like drama patterns, where you're just like constantly just like engaging in gossip, even where it's just like, oh, what did this celebrity do, what is it, all these things that can kind of trigger like maybe envy, jealousy, the us versus them mentality, where it's just like constantly kind of putting that in your consciousness. I don't feel like that is a recipe to have a peaceful, joy-filled day. I think especially once you start kind of I don't want to say abandoning that, but just like kind of just letting it go. Just stop putting your attention towards those things and just kind of embrace that. Maybe reality, or at least my perception of reality, can be altered, can be kind of changed through what I'm putting my attention towards. And if that is true, I'll put that to the test by putting my mental diet more of a priority. It's just kind of keeping things simple. It's got it wrote down, because it's really easy for the old mind to want to convolute and overcomplicate very simple concepts, and throw in all these hypothetical what ifs and all these types of like worst case scenario thinking. All of these types of things that are really irrelevant, and most of those are stories made up in the mind. And not only that, but it's past stories of the mind that keep reoccurring. And it's like it almost gives you an opportunity to either reaffirm those same beliefs, if you want to change how you're relating to it, maybe revising how you're kind of dealing with some of these past beliefs and assumptions. Sometimes, especially when you're dealing with maybe like abuse situations, or it's just like unnecessary drama and conflict, and just like, what in the fuck, why do I kind of keep dealing with this kind of shit? Take a look at it. Not to say to continually be abused. I think that's like really one of the old mindsets of like, oh, to be Christ-like you need to be a victim and like yeah, take a bunch of shit, but I don't take that message, from my relationship, I guess, with God, and like the all of that kind of stuff. It's like I take it entirely kind of differently, in the sense that yeah, at one point, Jesus like flipped tables up and like chased people with like a whip and shit. It's just like, there's like imagine doing that today. Just going into like, I'm not gonna like name drop like some like religion, person that comes to mind, but just to go into their church or whatever, and just like, you guys are like serving Satan and like throwing their tables up. It's pretty intense. And so to think of like you need to be some punching bag for somebody else, I feel like is really part of your self concept that it was from the past. Maybe in the past you thought that was who you are, somebody that should be abused and treated like shit, and just like lied to and gaslit and everything else. And it's kind of one of those things you have to start to discern, when you're seeing that kind of antichrist spirit, on the outside, through, friends, family, culture, all of the, it's something that you see with your own eyes after a while, and it's becoming more and more obvious, which I feel like is a good thing, because this has been going on. What's weird for maybe most people is like they're like thinking this started with COVID. This just been going on, and it's been actually, from my perspective, more and more people waking up. So it almost feels like, worse, like in 10 years ago, everybody just like cover their ears, cover their eyes, get triggered, shut down, call you names. yeah, just dismiss you as like a lunatic, some crazy conspiracy theorist, conspiracy, just parroting fucking talking points. But like, once you like kind of see how this is playing out in like interpersonal relationships, maybe through like your spouse or family, close friends, how it's like, okay, where's the logic? Where's the person I used to know? Why is this all of a sudden seem like a shadow? Or an NPC kind of automaton vibe, that just doesn't seem to be able to act like a human being anymore. What is that about? And so the mind wants to start to overcomplicate things and project its own drama onto others. But one of the quickest things to kind of bring that back, is to, instead of seeing the quote unquote other as, and blaming them, even if it is their fault, it's like, not to say that people are just like, oh, innocent little things. A lot of people are fucking abused and fucked up, and like they got all sorts of issues going on. And even if they're doing their best, it yeah, it's like your best is not that good, so it's like, appreciating like the fact that everybody's at different levels of things is important, not to like get into the old kind of the mindset of like, oh, well, I'm superior, I'm the special boy, because I don't have that problem. Looking at things more connected and going, okay, what is this about? This didn't just happen for no reason. That's the other part of the chaos mind. It's like, oh, just random things happen, and just shit happens. Who knows? Who knows why it happened? It's just. But when you start to go within and asking God, he's like, what is going on with this? Why does this keep happening? I thought I was supposed to, supposedly loved by you. Why is this shit? How is this loving? If I'm getting abused all the time, having people just talking shit and just, whatever's going on in your life, and then, especially when it's repeating over and over and over again, it's just like, I get on one hand, it's like, oh, okay. If you start to kind of explore it within your own being, it's like, okay, well, I get, sometimes, having these dark impulses and whatnot, but it's like, I'm supposed to, be like Christ-like, I guess, where it's like, following that kind of example, where it's like, Jesus forgave the people that murdered him and like betrayed him and like drag him through town, embarrassed him in public and all this kind of shit. And it's like, still being able to like not just speak the words, but actually not hold that against people. It's like, okay, well, supposedly that's inside of me somewhere, but I don't feel like I'm connecting with it, because I'm just like seeing others and just like being disgusted with them, or just being like so fucking tired of your drama, and your bullshit and this upside down parroting satanic narratives, and it's just like, at what point, how long do you got to continuously deal with it, and then like the biblical response, 70 times 7, so it's like, okay, so 490 times, so someone's being an asshole for 2 years, that's over 365 days in a year, if they continuously do it, it's like, have we crossed the threshold? Can you finally, just do something about it, and part of that, is like, instead of sitting there blaming others, which is what the old mind likes to do, it likes to attack others, and it likes, and there's a time when you're legitimately just getting shit on for no reason, other than, somebody's just whatever's going on within them, and that's one of the things I would like to see change, as far as like moving forward, is less and less of this fucking like, oh, it's okay to just act like like an idiot, it's just like, oh, well, I happen to know whatever, it's like, I'm just gonna attack this person. It's like, what, that's insane, especially, when you see like most of these things are not coming from just strangers, it's just like the people closest to you, and that's like one of the things I've had to deal with and process. It's like, this kind of vibe where it's just like, oh, well, I don't feel like I've really felt love from others. And that's like kind of a weird thing to say, because like, I've had people comment and like send me things and like email and like communicate, through like the internet, like some of the nicest, kindest things you can probably ever hear from another human being, has like been expressed, on some level. I've like, experienced the, and but at the same time, it's just like, okay, but with my family, with my like people I'm surrounded by, with all of this kind of stuff, it just feels like nobody fucking cares, and it's like it's no, yeah, it's like, oh, I don't have a problem being cruel and dismissive. It's just like, oh, you're just the crazy one. You're just the crazy one. Because yeah, it's like, trying to rectify that, moving forward. Again, there's not much you can do, as far as like, oh, I'm going to shake them awake, but I guess the piece of things start to come when you just trust that God's dealing with them, because when it starts to become something that you feel like you got to do, it's like, oh, you got to punish them, you got to put vengeance on them, you got to do the punishing of others. I mean, you're ultimately then doing it to yourself, which then spins you in a cycle. And like the person that could have just been a complete asshole, witnessed by God as being like, yeah, this person is being out of line big time, yeah, but it's like, yeah, they were out of line big time, but if you are then holding on to that of like, well, I'm not going to be able to rest until I witness them suffering in return, or like I want to see them get their karma. It's like I can't wait to see how they suffer. You're falling for a trick that's spinning you down the wrong direction. It's lowering your vibe. It's lowering your frequency. It's think of things as moving up and down. You're moving states of heaven or states of hell, either states of love or fear. This left, past, present, future, linear time kind of concept, this illusion, is really irrelevant for the actual present moment. It's like, because the things of the past are constantly, we're reaping and sowing these things, and so unless we become conscious of that, we're just repeating the same loops and cycles over and over again. And most of those loops are suffering loops. They're loops that are, caused by errors in thinking, and not only in ourselves, but then, putting way too much, people on a pedestal, or putting, giving somebody else the keys to your emotional state of being. It's like, oh, unless I have this person's approval and validation, then I can't feel a certain way. That's another kind of thing I've noticed, especially in my own self, where it's just like, I recognize that, through like the music business. There's all these like, oh, these milestones and everything else. It's the same thing with like, having another business, having a handyman business. It's different. It's like you have these same kind of like milestones, but like, it gets to a point of it's like, do you need to get a Grammy to like feel like you've made it? It's like, do you need to like be like, oh, praised by like the local paper that's like, oh, your business is doing whatever, then you've made it. It's like, I start looking into culture. I see a lot of that kind of manipulation and just like authoritarian upside down clown world shit, and it's just like, who gives a fuck about, having approval and validation from these people? It's like, letting go of like, oh, I need to be praised and whatever by this system, fuck this, it's like, it's insane. And it's like continuously to try to get validation, and that's what so many truthers like fall into that trap too. It's like, oh, well, I'm just bringing this information so that Neil deGrasse Tyson then will admit the world's flat. it's like, okay, if you believe, it's like, you don't need the NASA to validate you. You don't need these quote unquote experts to like, oh, all of a sudden just start to praise you. It's just like you're following the same kind of trick, just in a different way. And that's so much of like the binary of things is like, yeah, you might not be tricked over here, but you're still falling for this illusion, just in a different way, but you're doing the same thing as the other person. And it's funny, because it's like you'll see that kind of thing, maybe obviously, like in this period of time, where it's just like, okay, well, you have this vaccine shit, where it's just like, you have people that are like both wishing death on others, so it's like, the vax people, wish, and not to say everybody's doing it, but it's just like a glaring example that's obvious. It's just like, okay, well, the vax people, are wishing death on the unvaxxed and blaming them for perpetuating their own prison that they're building by obeying Satan, basically. But like, then you have the other side of it, where you have the unvaxxed. They're just like, hoping that these vaccinated people will just like take their boosters and eventually just disappear, and just have that just be gone, and it's the same thing. You're both of them are on two sides of it, but they're both guilty of, wishing death on others. You see how that kind of works. It's the same kind of paradigm with like the left versus the right. Because I remember, during 9/11, it was the Republicans that were like the fucking out of their mind lying assholes, just putting us in a bunch of wars, murder, death, destruction for decades, and everything else over false pretenses and lies. But now it's like, oh, now the tables have kind of turned. There's like been a switch, where now all of a sudden the liberals, they're like falling for this shit, where it's just like, oh, I don't want freedom, I just want to feel safe. And it's like, well, the safety that the system offers is only an illusion, and they don't have the authority to give you freedom. So that's another part of this thing, where it's just like, you're believing a nonsense thing, by obeying the authoritarian bullshit. I was listening to, I think it was Owen Benjamin, it was like bringing up this concept of authoritative speech, which is very common when it comes to shit from like legacy media, to make basically what authoritarian speech is based on presumptive assumption of authority to tell others what to do. And it's like, that authority is completely make-believe. And that's part of the illusion, of like this pecking order that's actually not even real, where it's like people are at these different levels of things. Most of these things that the world offers are an illusion, and it's like, oh, if I only get this carrot out here, then I'll feel a certain way. And part of the delusion is that you don't recognize that every single time that happens, it's followed by maybe manifesting that goal, but not changing the old mindset. So now it's only now amplified the fear, which is also ultimately what it is. So it's like, money's a really good example of that. Just that I've seen in my own kind of like experience of life. Where it's just like, you can have scarcity in regards to money. And like, I feel like that's a total spell. But like, when it comes to like scarcity, it swings both ways. If you have none, then it's like kind of more obvious. Maybe that's what people are kind of more familiar with, with this brainwashing, that so much of the masses have got about money, and how you acquire it and what it is. And, they're almost like purposely ignorant of where money even comes from, even though it's like the foundation of capitalism. So it's like the like basic 101s about it, being created up out of debt from the Federal Reserve, and how it, which I had a big problem with that for a long time. It was like, it's always it's a Ponzi scheme. It's how nobody noticed that. But I've grown to kind of appreciate the fact that you can create money out of nothing. It's really handy, for like artists, where they can, create out of their own being. They're using their own God-given creativity to create something of value, which then all of a sudden that came from nothing and now has a value. But the basis of like the Ponzi scheme is like, it's based by you got interest that can't be paid off, and so you just constantly have to keep shuffling the shit around and hopefully nobody notices, but like, the thing about like the abundance mindset versus the scarcity is like, oh, if I don't have enough, that's one thing. But then there's the flip side of the pendulum, where it's like maybe you win the lottery or you just come into a lot of money, and then all of a sudden you're not afraid of like not having it, then you're afraid to death that you're going to lose it all. You're afraid that it's going to just like there's not it's going to be taken from you. There's like this new thing to spend your present moment in a state of worry, which is a state of fear, which is a state of illusion, which is ultimately something to start to work on. And so it's really important to kind of keep things simple. It's like how are you feeling right now? Is like there's something going on that's like a repeating pattern of something. Are you, and is in that repeating pattern you trying to move in a different direction to evolve part of your identity? Maybe you've been in like a kind of a shitty relationship, and it's like you're finally starting to get some self-confidence and like self-worth, just feeling like you are good enough to not be abused and shit like that, and then all of a sudden shit gets worse all of a sudden. It's like, oh, by the time and it's like a lot of times you can look at that as like, oh, the narcissist or whatever label you want to slap on, like the psycho, the authoritarian, the brainwash, the NPC person that's, and I hear like these kind of language of like, oh, they're being so selfish. It's like, what does that even mean? What do you mean by selfish? What does selfish mean? It's like, and especially when you realize everything's connected. So there's only one self. So what it, and it's in everyone. It's like, I think part of this selfish definition has to do with like believing that you're separate from others. But once you realize that that's not real, that you are connected with others, and we're connected through consciousness, and what we're dealing with individually is also happening collectively in this broader culture. It's something to kind of re-examine. A lot of these things can be re-examined, but like, looking at these things, it's like, oh, I'm just starting to move in a new direction, which has been typical. I've experienced it typically, with like, being self-employed and having a business and stuff like that, where you get these repeating patterns, where it's ultimately relying on the promise of God that God provides, and it's no different than any other promise of God. The only difference is, from my perspective, I've just put that to the test more, and so some of these other areas of life, not, with the levels, some people can be really good with their faith up here, in one area, and then just total fucking below the bar on others, other areas. And we are all kind of like that in different ways. Some people are really good at some areas and very poor in others. But, I think part of this, kind of coming together is kind of to even things out, so we're all kind of rising up together. But looking at those things as they happen, it's not being an accident or coincidence or something to be like in your mind, like, oh, why is this happening? And I'm going to complain about it, and then as I'm complaining, I'm going to start strengthening that and creating more things to complain about, and just spin out in this cycle that's just repeating and getting worse and worse. Or I can recognize, hey, it's the same pattern. it's presenting differently. There's a promise of God that I'm not believing. That's kind of along really close to the root of this problem. And it's time to kind of start building faith in that promise. And if this resistance is going to keep emerging, I'm just going to face it, deal with it, ask God what to do if I get really triggered about it. Which, God is within you. Your connection to God is, Jesus is within you. The Holy Spirit is with, it's within, it's however these labels, if you go into the Bible yourself, Jesus, it said specifically to seek the kingdom of God, which is within you. And so, I would suggest you do that because it actually is helpful and it works. And like, and how it works is a lot of times very unique, but one of the common things is as you be still and you get these racing thoughts from the old mind and the old stories and the old narratives that you're telling yourself, consciously and unconsciously, they're just happening because they're just something that you believe. Some limiting belief is playing out. Continue to ask God what God's opinion is about it, and then you get some old story. That wasn't God that said that. You get some new story. Yeah, that's not it. And you go through 4 or 5 of these layers of narratives that are kind of binding you to this frequency, this level. And then all of a sudden you blow through that, and you just be able to be still observe the thoughts and the emotions. I don't not say to run from these things. Even the dark emotions, these quote unquote dark emotions are there, regardless of whether you're like, oh, here's a dark emotion, let me just push that back down. I don't want to deal with it. Or okay, I had it's a dark emotion, it's a dark imagining. Instead of just running and hiding, and it's like, oh, if I think this way and, it's in my consciousness, then God's going to be angry and mad and throw me in hell and punish me and make me suffer, which is like, okay, well, why do I think God's going to do that? And it's like, God has anger problem. God has anger. It's like, but I have anger then too. So it's like both of us in consciousness have this emotion. It's like, so is it bad then if God has that emotion? It's like, and there's a lot of mental gymnastics. A lot of religious people would kind of like jump through hoops to go, well, let me tell you what, it's righteous anger. And it's like, start going within, and figuring this thing out for yourself, because it's like, with the help of God, obviously, with the help of the Holy Spirit, which is within you, that's your teacher, as the Bible would say. Not some expert out here. Everybody out here is a personality with their own veils. But like, the more that you're able to kind of put into practice these things, you'll see it for yourself. You'll be able to kind of get it with your own vocabulary and your own life experience. Some of the broader points. And the more the subtle things. That's part of your individualism, as part of your uniqueness, your unique understanding. We all have unique understandings, because we've all had a unique life, even though we're all kind of playing out the same life. It's part of the mysteries. So many mysteries. This this constantly unfolding mystery. Which I kind of talked about last time. I was on here, is how like when you really like put your attention on things that you love, say it's like an instrument or your children, or your instrument or your children, it's like whatever, it's like your children, your family, whatever your priorities are, or whatever, but like, speaking as someone who's like, put a lot of attention onto like doing like a thing, it's just like the more you put your attention on it, like the more it's like, oh, there's this whole new style I didn't even know it was real, and it's like I heard somebody doing it, and now it's like, then you try to do that, and then it's something you're just doing. You never actually win. It's like by the time you think you won something, you're just like, you get shown how little you actually even know. It took me 20 years of playing guitar to realize how important silence was. It's like you're only playing half the instrument if you're only focused on how many notes you can put into a beat. It's like, oh, there's like an eighth note, I'm going to 16th, I'm going to do a 30-second. It's like I'm going to just do as fast as fucking possible, and that makes me quote unquote good, because I can shove so many notes in a little piece of, and how many notes can you hit in a bar? It's just like, versus now he's like kind of this understanding of like, oh, it's like, if you're not experimenting with the silence, you're only playing half the music. That took 20 years to learn that, but like, here you go. That's my gift to you. You save yourself 20 years of fiddling around on the guitar to learn that. But like, but it's the same thing. It's like, as you're doing new things, as you're growing, it's like, there's more and more mysteries. There's more and more things to learn. There's more and more things to experience. And it's like, you can experience that in states of love that feel good, or you can experience these unfolding, never-ending states of suffering going the opposite direction. So it's like, it's not really even a choice when it's like that black and white. It's like, do you want to be tricked into unconsciously descending into madness and constantly having new horrors emerging? It's happening, because you're just going that deep, and it's unfolding all these things. Or you could have the opposite, where it's like unfolding mysteries of like heaven and love and joy and peace, more and more levels, and more exploring that. connectivity, the oneness, learning about what creation's even about, and you're learning about your actual identity, what that means with a relationship with God. It seems like a no-brainer to me, but like everybody's got to make their own choices, I guess, and yeah. Other than that, I think I'm gonna kind of bounce. I gotta get to do a little bit of drywall. This whole week's been kind of a mess, when it comes to like my workflow. It's been having a lot of like, I ordered this post to fix this staircase rail. Somebody backed into it with their car. Yeah, and I took it. None of the hardware stores here locally had it, and so I had to order it. It said it should have been here, 3 to 5 days or whatever. And it's been. I put the order in on Friday, and it still hasn't even. They printed the shipping label, but they haven't even got the thing to them, I guess. So it's like, oh, okay, well that's great, and so I wanted to get all this outside shit done before it gets super cold, and then so there's that, and then just one thing after another, which is I don't know. Now I'm going to take responsibility for that. Hopefully, hopefully, things kind of mellow out. I got to go do a drywall thing, which I'm going to have to walk there because, my wife she's doing a job at a customer's house, which I thought was in town, but turns out, is a different customer with the same name that is like 20 minutes away. And so it's like, oh, well, then you can go borrow the vehicle because I'm still kind of in the process of like getting the other vehicle paid for and, so that she can drive it and use it and whatnot. I got a $1,100 deposit on this job, which pays for half the vehicle, which the other half is all getting paid through work that I'm supposed to do over there, but I'm trying to front the money so that I can, just get the vehicle in our name and have her driving it and not have to dick around with like waiting on this project to get going. And so, yeah. And if you're out there feeling extra abundant, it's like, PayPal support's in the description, but like, I think I'm going to bounce, thanks everybody for liking, sharing, subscribing. I appreciate your spiritual support and your financial support. Thank you for that. And, I think that's going to be it. So until the next now, God bless.